Okay. Now that we have all teams indicated, we would start very soon. Just want to confirm from DIALECTix who is to do the recording before we start the debate proper.
Yeah, I'm doing the recording. It's already on, so you can begin your round.
All right, thank you. So, once again, I am Odeolaj, and I'll be the chair for this round. Congratulations, everybody, for making it through to the finals DIALECTix ProAm 2022. So, without wasting any of our time, let's just begin this debate, and I wish us all the best of luck. So, on the motion, this House as Pope would interpret the concept of hell as non-existence. I hereby welcome the Prime Minister. Here.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. So, are we starting soon? I'll be starting in 3, 2, 1. Panel, we think that Christianity as a religion has existed on a concept of hell and eternal damnation for as long as we can remember. We think that this has resulted in the utilization for control within the religion. We think that this is principally illegitimate due to the fact that Christianity has over time been seen as a medium for oppression, even like within the people that subscribe to Christianity. We think that that is one that like we are going to prove in this debate why it is principally illegitimate. We think that what this debate asks for us is to interrogate the harms it has caused, like the concept of hell, and why as the Pope and why as the Church would change it and like create a new narrative for Christianity. We think that first of all, what is this debate not about? We think that no opposition bench come and say, the backlash on Pope or the Pope shouldn't do this, because we think that the Pope in this motion literally represents the interest of the Catholic Church, and due to the influence within the Christian religion, and that is like the legitimacy of the Pope to be the one carrying the action. But those are not really the important things in this debate. We also think that opposition shouldn't come and argue about our world is going to be in chaos because people are now not going to be able to do the right things due to the fact that there's no longer concept of hell in Christianity. Because first of all, we think that this would not make any sense because number one, not everyone is a Christian. That means you're literally saying that only Christian people who like subscribe to the religion are moral beings. We think that is like we have so many like 1,000 religion people who never subscribe to religion. We don't think that we have like societal mechanisms that already take care of like moral actions and like people's actions within society, like the criminal justice system. So we do not think that people are definitely now going to get erratic and do whatever the fuck they want just because we remove the concept of hell. But also, why do we think like our world works small? First of all, what is the legitimacy of the action? First of all, we think that there's been a particular clamor and evolution within the Christian religion. That is why you get examples like the Pope in recent times saying that now the LGBT is accepted. You also think like you also get things like various discourse about how it is not even the concept of hell is not one that is compatible with 21st century, because like people are asking the question, there's hell in other religions, there's hell, like that means that as a Christian I'm going to go to like a Muslim hell. We think that is why like discourse has been around and why people are feeling, and there's a clamor within the religion that we should remove the concept of hell. We also think that people also there's an understand of like societal aspects. That means that the religion might say, if I steal, then I'm going to go to hell. But you also need to understand like societal aspect, like since like maybe famine or a particular situation which may put people in the situation to steal, and like how it is now incompatible with the notion of a just God and a merciful God, which one that would take that person to hell. Also, we think that also the narrative of Christian like in Christianity in the recent time, which has been seen as one of like an oppressive or a religion that instrumentalizes the fear of hell to continue to get by in within the religion, or people to have no opt-out mechanisms. We think that is one that is illegitimate. We think that also there's the absence of moral meaning within the concept of hell. That means that basically on Upworld they say that there's particular actions that, or if you do not subscribe to like Christian religion, that means that you're going to hell. So examples like since people that have suffered within like and died within like the Rwanda genocide, or horrible things like that, a just God is going to send them to hell due to the moral arbitrary of the meaning of hell. It is one that has created clamor for people to for the church to like abolish hell within Christianity. Why also do we think like this is one that is legitimate? We think that this is one that is going to lead to things like a particular sense of freedom and even like within the church. We think that this would lead to people that subscribe to Christianity actually subscribing to it because they want to, not because there's like a fear there's a fear of hell and eternal damnation. We also think that people are going to be able to self-actualize within the concept of religion because they are not like literally in a box. That means that you have like 1,000 rules to follow, and if you do not follow that, you're going to be entirely damned, even due to the fact that also the same religion tells you that humans are intrinsically flawed and humans are intrinsically going to actually commit to those particular wrongs. We think that is one that is principally legitimate. We also think that the fact that people and religious leaders are want to like instrumentalize like this concept of hell due to the fact that they use it to terrorize like the poor and uneducated people in society, and they tell them that for example, like within the concept of Christianity, they would say that if you do not pay your tithe, even though you're literally living from hand to mouth, then you are going to hell. It is one that is principally illegitimate, and the Pope, due to the responsibility and like the interest of Christianity, should be the one to like remove that like instrumentalization. We think that the principle here limits people's choices because now people who are in the religion are only continually buying into it because they are afraid of going to hell and they're afraid of like being eternally damned. We think that that's one that is illegitimate because individuals have no opt-out mechanisms. We think I continue. I will take a POI from closing.
Right. So when people enter into religion, they enter into it because they subscribe to the beliefs and systems there. Why do you then think it is legitimate to change these beliefs and systems and then think that it will ultimately be better?
All right. They enter. I've already interrogated to you how societal. Like society is every day evolving, and apart from that, we do not think that the majority of people that subscribe to religion like actually enter it because of what closing says. We think that most people that subscribe to religion are actually either born into religious families in most of the instances, which like limits their opt-out, and since they're already taught right from beginning that there's a concept of hell, like they feel like there's doubt. Also, we think on our side we get legitimate buy-in to religion because I've already told you like this is incompatible with the concept of like just God and a merciful God and a God that wants to save all beings. We think that what you do is when you remove concept of hell is that people are not going to want actual people who actually believe in Christian religion and want to actually serve God and Jesus Christ are going to buy in, not because they fear internal damnation. We think that is one that is more principally legit and one that is more better in society. But what are all the impacts of our arguments? First, we think that we create buy-in on our side because, as I said, people are going to buy in because they actually want to. The narrative of an oppressive religion is removed. People's choice. Also, we think that we get some sort of internal protection because we think people are going to even open up more on our side on their problems and the issues that they face because now there's no concept of hell or damnation and there's no concept of people judging them. We think that you reduce something like psychological backlash, suicide within the church, and so many other problems you get on opposition side. We beg to propose this motion.
All right. Thank you very much, Prime Minister, for that fine speech. We welcome the leader of opposition to continue the debate. It's for us. Here.
Hello, can you?
Yes, you are audible.
All right. If you can hear me, that's great. I'm going to take points of information in the chat space. Don't budget any points. Just say it once. I'll surely take your query. I have no preferred gender pronoun, and I'm going to start in the next 5 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go. So, Speaker, let's be very clear about what exactly does the Pope literally looks like in society. We think within the Catholic Church system, in order for them to literally have a representation within religion itself, the Pope is the one who interprets and literally gives like the idea, the meaningful conversations that exist within that system. The ideology then is based specifically on how actions have consequences within that religion. In order, as a check-in mechanism, the idea is based specifically on how the Pope is able to influence individuals into doing the right thing within the consequences of exactly how hell would literally be their ultimate destiny if they're going to exist within the negative side. But most importantly, we need to literally look on the bright side. The idea is based specifically on how when you preach about the consequences of negativeness, there's that ideas of exactly how you preach about the consequences of positiveness. The idea is based specifically on how hell exists to keep individuals not only to do like the ideas of exactly the bad thing, but most importantly to make sure that those bad things are not done at all. The Pope then literally influences individuals within the consequences that exist at a point in time when hell is there. The idea now is based specifically on what at a point in time when hell is now being considered in the non-existent. Does the ideas of exactly the benefits of you being good, that is to say heaven, still exist within that religious system? We think it then causes an ideas of exactly how the counter narrative of what hell is, there's an elimination of what heaven literally means. The Pope has a direct engagement within the church system, firstly to keep individuals within system of exactly the morality that they're literally presenting within that church a certain type of benefits. When you then no longer have the consequences of negativeness, there's no longer the benefits of positiveness, and we think that then becomes a bad thing. In principle, the idea now is based specifically on how you destroy the building mechanism of what religion literally looks like within the Catholic system. But secondly, the ideas of exactly how, in order to maintain the balance that exists within that system and within the church, the Pope is able to do so because of these two conflicting principles, which is heaven and hell. When you decide to interpret one as non-existent, it means the other also is automatically indirectly non-existent. The idea is based specifically on how what is in the best interest of the Pope himself to literally control and regulate the systems that exist within church itself. Most importantly, at a point in time when there's no that balancing system, we don't literally think there's any positiveness that comes from that church system. The idea that exists in opening government is very simple in terms of the harm that you then bring to the church, because we usually think that the idea is based specifically on what the influence the Pope has in the church itself. Secondly, the representation that they give to the church. But lastly, the ideas of exactly why the balancing system of exactly why you keep individuals in morality, respecting the dignity and the principles that has been created by the concept of church itself, is based specifically on the consequences that come when you literally choose to do the negative things within that religion itself. We think most importantly, when those consequences exist, the ideas of exactly the Pope himself literally having a balancing system within representation then becomes self-defeating. When you decide to interpret the concept of hell as non-existent, that's what you literally have within the system that exists within that church. Right? We think that balance is so important, but most important, the type of representation that comes from this Pope is so important. Before I move on, I'll happily take a POI from closing government. Go ahead, Macharia, make me feel stupid.
So if it's true that the church can't interpret that there needs to be a reward mechanism, why has the church created the system of purgatory where sinners who are Catholics can go and atone for their sins before they go to heaven? Therefore, they've done this before. It's not a new thing where they remove the reward system where it has to be pain or pleasure.
Okay, so the idea is, right, when they did this, the rewarding system that they gave is one where there's most importantly like the ideas of exactly the consequences that you still have to face consequences, right? The system that they literally created is one where they were like that ideas of exactly how you don't literally need to like maximize within the negative aspect. The conversation that we're literally giving you from opening opposition is pretty simple. The philosophical aspect that has been created within the system that exists within church is based specifically on what the balancing system the Pope literally gives and the influence that they have. That representation and exactly that balance that they literally need to maximize and utilize within church is very, very important, based specifically on the rewarding system. But secondly, we think that this debate is based specifically on what the Pope literally is and the influence that the Pope has within the whole. It's based specifically on how it's limited to Catholic individuals. The individuals who went for purgatory system were individuals who didn't exist within that Catholic system. The idea is based specifically on how they were like literally given a way of exactly how they can literally repatriate and have a form of redemption in the long run. The purgatory system never implied individuals who existed within the Catholic era. That's why they were created a form of system itself. This debate is very, very limited to the individuals who have the influence and the representation of the Pope itself. That is why it then becomes self-defeating, most importantly, in the principles that build the church, but secondly, the ideas of exactly how the church itself has been regulated within this principle, within this philosophy of exactly how you're able to have a better checking mechanism of exactly how the actions of morality and the actions of principles can better be checked by the Pope himself. The idea is based specifically on which word do you in a world where you literally interpret hell as non-existent. That ideas of exactly how individuals no longer think that the ideas of exactly you're going to get a reward of heaven. It means it then becomes that ideas of exactly how there's going to be things such as like violence within like the ideas of exactly you no longer know what to believe, because most importantly the Pope can just interpret like the ideas of exactly any concept how he wants it, most importantly, and that then becomes bad, because at a point in time when what you're preaching now and what you're preaching then becomes self-defeating within the religion itself, then becomes self-defeating. The Pope has a duty to regulate and sustain that principle in the long run. In philosophy, we tell you most importantly how it literally has that ideas of exactly the rewarding system that exists within the church in terms of exactly the type of actions portrayed by the Pope. We think that's very, very important. With this, we are proud to oppose. The motion has been defeated.
All right. Thank you very much, Leader of Opposition, for that fine speech. Just a minute to stop the timer before we move to the next speaker. All right, so okay, thank you very much, Leader of Opposition, for that fine speech. Let's have the Deputy Prime Minister to please proceed the debate for us.
Okay, that's am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, just a sec. POIs exclusively in the text space. Really happy to do this run. POI is exclusively in the text space. Please don't unmute yourself to ask me a point. So, I will start my speech. Just a second. Okay, I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. We think why it is legitimate for the Pope to do this and why our framing still stands is because one, notice that over time different popes have come and gone and have like reinterpreted several religious texts in order to fit the context of that particular society. Note that this is crucial given what you get out of like Prime Minister's speech. But secondly, note that why it is legitimate for the Pope to do this, even if they are able to prove any amount of backlash, because notice that popes have like reinterpreted religious texts in the past, and there has been no significant amount of backlash that reduces their relevance within that particular space. Even if there is backlash, notice that the fact that he became a pope, or like the person he is a pope in the first instance, means that they have sacrificed a whole lot of their life. It means that even if this is an extra sacrifice that they have to make, it doesn't reduce the legitimacy for why they should do this in and of itself. But notice exclusively why our side like significantly has less backlash, because we are able to create buy-in and opt-in into religion, because we are able to expand the religion to fit the evolving context of that particular society. We think by this like liberation of individuals from slavery that exists within like Christianity in and of itself, we are able to achieve that full amount of buy-in that's able to get that form of dogmatic following of the Pope in order to mitigate any amount of backlash that's likely to occur on their side of the house. I think all spends a whole lot of time discussing nonsense, because what they say is that we should motivate people to do the right thing. We think that the concept of punishment within Christianity is not analogous to the concept of punishment within society. These are individuals with like who commit a whole lot of atrocious crimes within the concept of like Christianity allowed to go free. Even if on your deathbed you are able to say, God have mercy on me, I'm sorry. That's what Christianity teaches in and of itself. But people who are not Christians but were like unfortunate to die within instances of the genocide, or unfortunate to die within instances of robbery, are like condemned to eternal damnation. It means the concept of justice within the society that we live in is not analogous. It means that they are not able to create any form of incentive for people to do good within society. Our side does not create any harmful societal impact by the virtue of the fact that there are already existing mechanisms in place that ensures that individuals respect the dignity of others within society. This is fundamentally crucial within this debate. We think that there are a whole lot of reasons why like the Pope should interpret religious texts in order to create a non-existence of hell. One reason, we think that there's a whole lot of contention within the Christian space as to what hell looks like. It means a whole lot of individuals are trying to magnify what hell looks like in and of itself in order for them to be able to advocate for their own selfish interests. We think by this premise, it means that for the Pope to be able to remedy and create that form of like consensus within the Catholic space, he must therefore use his authority to remove like the concept of hell, in as much as individuals are able to weaponize it to be able to torture people's minds, but limit their free will fundamentally. We think this is harmful. But secondly, on a second level, why we think we should remove this is the most important reason, and it's a debate-winning argument. We think that the concept of a just God and the concept of a merciful God is absent on the side of the house. Because notice exclusively that individuals who are more deserving of mercy, because of the kind of conditions that the God like predestined them to live in, are condemned to hell. We think that this is not justice, seen as like for a fact a whole lot of their oppressors are likely to go free in the afterlife because they donated maybe to Christian spaces, or perhaps they said a prayer on their deathbed because they had the privilege of doing so. We think that the concept of mercy, that God is a merciful God, is absent on their side of the house on this premise. But we think that lastly, why this is largely immoral, is that the concept of sacrifice, say for instance that Christianity says that God sent his only begotten son to die for our sins, is something that is inconsistent with the concept of hell. Why is this true? Not on their side of the house, but they are likely to say, or what like Christianity or the concept of hell is likely to prove, is to say that individuals who are unable to be saved are individuals that God is ought to punish. It means that God did not send his only begotten son to save all souls. The only way where God can be able to absolve himself of this failure of sending his only begotten sons is to punish the individuals that were unable to be saved. We think this is primarily immoral and a primarily fundamentally wrong concept of how we should characterize God. For these reasons, we oppose the concept and the narrative of hell. We think that on their own side of the house, they are likely to get opt out of religion due to the evolving concept of society based on how we value justice, based on how we value mercy within society. It means on their own side of the house, individuals are likely to see God as selfish, but also the reduced conception of God as omniscient, seen as he's predestining your life and also going to make you suffer for that life that is already predestined. We think that this particular concept is one that in and of itself like limits individuals from being able to like see God as a good person and are likely to opt out. But also, I'm not taking you serious. Relax. We think that the assumption of the concept of free will is something that exists on the side of the house. Notice that they rely on like largely infringing on the choices of individuals, or like coercing them into doing certain things. We think that the concept of free will is something that's absent on the side of the house. At a particular point in time, we are able to monopolize on the concept of hell within religious spaces to brainwash people's mind and fundamentally reduce their free will and choices under that religion. It means that individuals are not actively making these choices to be good or actively making these choices to be evil on the side of the house. You are coercing them into making this choice. You don't see why a choice whereby individuals make to be good on the side of the house based on the premise that they are avoiding internal domination is something that is an objectively good concept, that is premised on the self-interest of individuals. We find this primarily immoral, and it's for these reasons that we oppose the concept of hell. But two things that comes at the end of this speech. One, notice that purgatory is something that fundamentally exists within religious spaces and fundamentally within the Catholic space in and of itself. This particular option is one that is available to certain individuals that maybe knew God, knew God, or accepted the concept of God, but made some certain mistakes, and they are fundamentally allowed to maybe change the outcome of their own afterlife. We think this is an immoral option, since that it's only an immoral concept, since that hell is it's only accessible to individuals who exist outside of religious space, and purgatory is accessible to individuals that exist within religious or this Christian space in of itself. We think the interpretation of hell creates an expansion of what purgatory looks like, and more accessibility for individuals to be able to remedy the outcomes of their life, saying that it is unfortunate that these individuals exist within this kind of lives in and of itself. But we think that lastly, we think that hell as a concept not just fundamentally limits free will, but also bars individuals from being makes individuals enslaved within a particular religious space. The last thing I'm going to discuss is why the Pope should fundamentally stop exploitation. This is also a fundamental reason why we should take this debate. We think that for a fact that religious individuals, different religious sects within the Catholic Church are able to characterize hell on how they want and how they like, based on their own premeditated selfish interests or what they want society to look like, fundamentally able to condemn certain individuals on the side of the house to a life where they to the kind of life they want or they expect them to live on based on their own concept of this religion. We think that for you to be able to stop this form of exploitation or this form of monolithical way whereby individuals are forced to live life in a certain spectrum, a certain concept, is a fundamental reason why the Pope should reinterpret the concept of hell or interpret the existence of hell to be non-existent in order to reduce the contention that currently exists within Catholic spaces. Just on the outside of the house, all sorts of religious space already exists because of what society looks like, but also a huge contention exists within the Catholic space. If we are able to resolve this and create buy-in, we are happy to propose.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister, for that fine speech. We proceed the debate by welcoming the Deputy Leader of Opposition. DLO, you have the floor.
I go Abuja, go see a tournament. I go swing all the rounds, break perfect. Time.
DLO.
One speaker two, the swing names are they using, and the top two speakers for the top.
That tournament name, how many rounds?
4 or 5. But the money they spend on them, they rented a whole flat just for that tournament. Meanwhile, 4 or 5 rooms worth of people that come.
Is it?
4 or 5 rooms worth of people and some 3 or 4 judges. So the tournament was more a fun tournament than, because a tournament we go Thursday with the barbecue night. Then them now go buy the meat, come grill, then buy drinks after you.
What about now?
Come eat as much as you.
Yes, you are audible now.
Wait, you're not forbid.
Alright, sorry about that. If I'm multiple points of information after my
them go tournament,
I will start my speech in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
So if them come Ghanaian tournament, them always say they take tournament to.
I'm waiting for the timer.
Taufik comes
I'm not
and he has a bag in
the
front
harms
of
of
him and it's full of money
deny the abuses
because he's
that
here
are
to spend.
propagated by
And you
religious
see small
figures.
kiddies, they
The question of today's debate is, as people enact motion, is the best strategy to utilize in modern times? What is the marginal impact and what are the results in relation to what you hope to achieve for the religion that you represent? So the debate should be analyzed from that frame of thinking, especially because it is an act of motion. Now, moving forward to this analysis, recognize that truth is not necessarily something that we can prove in the metaphysical aspect of today's debate, so we're not here to argue whether or not hell is real, but the impact of the belief in hell as a religion, which is Christianity. And the assumption that people in Christianity are undermined because of their low numbers is something that cannot be credited in this debate, because they are among the top 2 largest religions in the world, with over 2.3 billion people, regardless of whether you are Catholic or Christian or Protestant. You're all influenced by the figurehead of the Pope being the dominant global representation and figurehead of the Bible, because the Bible is constructed by historical value and president of institutions that are under Catholicism, which was the initial original church. Now, moving forward, another thing you have to understand in this debate is that hell is not a standalone concept that exists in isolation. It is the afterlife, which embodies also elements of demons and the devil, who is the main adversary of the idea and aspect of God as an entity. Without hell, or without the existence of hell being real, we also undermine the existence of the afterlife. We undermine the existence of heaven. But if hell and heaven are not real, that means Lucifer is not real. And if Lucifer is not real, that means all his interactions with Jesus Christ were simply Jesus having hallucinations. And that implies that God himself might have never sent his son to die for us, because who is he dying for? Does not exist, right? You literally undermine the whole precedence of the Christian religion in its entirety. Because, like I mentioned, hell is not a standalone concept, and the whole religion is based on the foundation of the existence of an afterlife, to which all these metaphysical and superficial entities operate and function in and from, and influence humanity through. So understand the major implication of this, not only being done by external criticizers, but by the Pope himself, who is a representation of the religion. You create the emphasis in that the religion is inconsistent. The main figurehead is willing to submit
on the power bank,
doctrine
like very
in order
frequently.
to acknowledge the perversions of modern society. Panel, if someone does not want to buy into the religious views, they are free to do so out of their own.
Even when it's 100%
the government should have leeway to manipulate political so as the Pope, I will not be manipulated into changing my doctrine so as to satisfy the needs of liberal-minded individuals who might disagree. No one is forcing you to be a Christian anymore. We don't live in times where we burn heretics. What kind of times do we live in? We live in times where there are now policies for tolerance and religious freedom and security to ensure that individuals' freedom to choose their religion is not undermined. Even in countries like Zimbabwe, you now have freedom of religion at the age of 11. We live in debate tournaments where equity violations are created to ensure that your religious beliefs are protected. Right, where we have intellectual conversations and discourse to ensure that all these things occur. But before I move on, I will take POI from CG.
Can the concept of the afterlife exist without having a binary of heaven and hell?
Yes, but then the concept of the afterlife was founded on the binary of heaven and hell. Hell does not exist, then heaven does not have a counterpart, because the heaven that you speak of, angels, is predicated on the existence of hell, in which demons came from. Because demons did not exist in hell, they were once angels. So if hell does not exist, angels fell to a non-existent place, which means angels did not fall at all. And if angels did not fall at all, because hell does not exist, then do angels really exist? No. The questioning of the existence of something so powerful undermines the entirety of the doctrine itself, because if hell is false and we believe it's true for so long, then what else is false, right? That is the thinking of modern man. That is what you have to understand. Hell, as I keep on mentioning, is not a standalone concept. It is literally the bedrock and foundation of the majority of things that influence religion. As I was saying, if people want to dissuade away from it, can do that on their own accord. We now have policies to protect people from being stoned to death and being beheaded because they have diverse perspectives, right? We have policies that tolerate the LGBT community, which is why even in Christian dominant societies, they can still get married, right? We don't believe that you should force someone to change their doctrine to suit your needs in the same way we don't try and change you to suit our needs, which is why these policies and laws have been created to ensure that everyone is mutually protected, right? The moment you choose one side over the other, you try and alter religion in order to suit social preference. And that is something that we are against in this debate, because as I keep on mentioning, this is an act of motion. As the Pope, my primary responsibility, and sorry to say this is a hard line, is to my religion beyond anything else, because I believe what my religion says and people believe in what my religion says. If at any point I'm dissuaded of that truth, I as the Pope should then step down and face my own existential convictions in my alone time and explain to the world, perhaps from a different perspective, as to why I chose to be so. But when you as the Pope declare that something that was once real in your ideology is false, the aftermath overspills to the point where you can no longer control what happens beyond that, because obviously you're going to get backlash from the Protestants, from the other religious denominations, from the Pentecostals as well, who are going to simply say, you see what's happening to the Catholic Church. The Pope is now a figurehead being used by liberal ideology in order to defend the left wing's policies, because the religion is nothing more than a mechanism that's a political tool for change. That is the kind of reality that we're going to exist in, right? So, panel, at the end of the day, this is how the debate was supposed to be analyzed, which opening government completely missed. You are the Pope. What are your intentions? The preservation of the dignity of your religion. That is not done by announcing that hell, the very adversary and the creation of the adversary of the God you believe in, is false. Because if that is false, then everything else must be false. Because who is God sending his son to die for? Who is God fighting against? Who is the opposite of God? If there is no hell, there is no heaven, there is no morality, there is no religion to speak of, it's all a fairy tale, right? And if that's what you want to believe as an individual outside of the religion, perfectly fine. We've instigated laws to protect you from that kind of judgments. Social judgment will always exist. Christianity and Catholicism are not the only religions that exist, right? We don't see people attacking Iran and Islam saying Sharia law should be false, and that the prophets who are in charge of those religions should therefore declare their realities and afterlives as false, right? We don't see people saying the Greeks should stop believing in Valhalla. Panel, if you want change, look for change. We have policy reform, we have social change, we have intellectual conversation and discourse, we have political correctness, we have ideologies, enlightenment eras, wokeness, we have media, we have conversations, we have instances like this where we can debate about these subjects without getting emotional and trying to kill each other, right? If you want change, change can exist outside of trying to change the doctrine itself, right? Either you change yourself or you change your religion, but do not change the religion to satisfy the needs of people who exist outside of the religion. And if people within the religion want to change, they're still free to do so. Yes, there will be backlash, and I'm not saying people shouldn't leave the religion. I'm saying with the goals you want to achieve, this is not how you're going to do it. If anything, this will make you fail.
All right. Thank you very much, Deputy Leader of Opposition, for running that stance for us. That was beautiful. So we move to the closing half of today's debate. CG, Member of Government, you have the floor.
Am I audible? Yes, so I'm audible. Thank you. Give me a second. Just I'm coming. Just a second. I hadn't thought this through. Okay, here we go. Could you put for the timer? Okay, I'll be looking at the chat. So if you have a POI, please put it in the chat. I'll use it to. I'll probably take one from opening opposition because they've taken us twice, so I'll probably take them. The second thing here is that I would like to give a shout out to Joyce Delali Wabezizan from the Swaggies. She made it to the final, but she couldn't debate. So congratulations, Joyce. Shout out. And shout out to the love of my life in the group, in the chat, I think. I won't say who it is. Anajijua. Anyway, thanks. It's been a pleasure. Starting my speech. Sorry, let me just set this. All right, starting in 3, 2, 1, go. Revelation 21 verse 8 says that, but the cowardly, the unbelieving, the vile, the murderers, the sexually immoral, those who practice magic arts, idolaters, liars, they will all be consigned to a fiery fire of burning sulfur, and this is the second death. Based on that metric, I assume almost this entire room is going to hell because all debaters lie, sexually immoral, I wouldn't say you're alcoholics, all these things. And these are the things we have to contend with every day when we live and when we wake up, is whether or not the existential crisis of me going to heaven or hell is something that's going, am I going to die today and go to heaven? Am I going to die today and go to hell? This is why the Pope must adjust this. And I think everything I'm saying really is an extension. So I'll try be as clear as possible. Let's start with the first thing I want to discuss. Can the Pope do this? And is it something that's possible to be done? I say there are 5 reasons why he can do this. In the Catholic Church, there's something called synods, when the Pope sort of like progressively prepares people for changes in the sort of interpretations of the religion. He does this by keeping on writing to different churches and explaining to them the reasoning of some of the decisions they make. Two, they have a council in the Catholic Church. It starts with an M. I don't know what it's called. Nolutando used to tell me about it. It's something that usually is used to create progressive interpretations of the church, and whenever the church needs to interpret things in the Bible, they do it. Three, the motion assumes he can do it, so let's assume he can. The fourth reason is that interpretation is not that difficult. All he needs to do is reinterpret things. What they tend to do is marry it in a lot of complication. They say, oh, the word hell comes from the Greek word what, and because of the progressive interpretation of the Bible over the years, they usually find a way of showing that the word didn't really mean what it does, therefore they can change the meaning of what hell is. And the Catholic Church is in a unique position where the Catholic Church, unlike other churches, has their own book. Their Bible is very different from everyone else. They can easily rely on those other books. I think there are 11 or 12 extra books to justify why in their interpretation they don't have hell. They've done this before with different interpretations of things, so it's something that's possible. That's the first thing. The second thing is, what would the message look like? And this is what responds to a lot of what Elo was saying and DLO about the afterlife and whether or not that false binary needs to exist. The whole idea about heaven needing to exist, for heaven to exist, there needs to be hell and all these things. How can they be able to do this? What they are likely to do is reframe the message. They're not going to say that there is no punishment. It's likely to be that no, hell does not exist, because hell as a concept, as you've seen from the verse I've said, is internal damnation in pain, fire, and everything else. They're likely to have a form or a new form of like punishment system that is less punitive than hell. The way they did this, and I think this is why my PR again was very strategic, was that when the Catholic Church created the concept of purgatory, what it told people is that you can be a sinner, but for as long as you're a Catholic, you won't go to hell. You just go to this middle place where you atone for your sins for a period of time, and then you go to heaven. So it still shows that the best of those who do well on earth who still get direct tickets into heaven, and those who maybe don't do as well or probably are sinners have somewhere else they go. That is not hell, eternal damnation, somewhere else that still shows some form of punishment, because they still need to satisfy the binary of those who do well have something better than those who don't do well. That's how the church is seen. So they have done this before and succeeded. I don't understand why this message cannot be reframed, and why was this interpretation necessary? There's huge disillusionment in the church, because many members and the dwindling influence of the church due to contradicting values that are very difficult to explain. I think some of them have been explained by OG. I won't go too much into that. Therefore, even just dwindling, the church needs to revive. How do we distinguish ourselves from opening government, and how do we come to this? The debate as deputy leader of opposition for the first time identifies, it's not about the benefits of this interpretation, but what are the interests of the people. Why does this then serve his best interest? Because opening government's case is really a benefit of this interpretation, not linking it to the specific interest to ensuring this happens. This is how we distinguish ourselves towards this. What is the interest of the Pope? The most important interest of the Pope is he wants to preserve unity in the church, both internally, externally, and its continuity. Let's go through these three interests and show you how they are best satisfied with this reinterpretation and the removal of the concept of hell. How does he ensure internal unity? Internal unity is usually within those who are like within the heads of the Catholic Church, the priests, those who are in the nuns and all those people. How would it make it better for them? It gives them better working conditions, because those individuals really care about their congregations. They've developed bonds with them over time, and they really care about the outcomes of these people. Imagine them having to constantly explain to people that you're going to hell. It makes their lives harder, and it makes it almost, in a sense, everyone wants moral authority from them. Oh, am I going to hell because I did this or that? How does this then make it better for those who exist within the church? One, it makes it easier for these people dealing with apologetics in explaining the Bible, because as noted, most of the things in the Bible sometimes are very difficult to explain, such as what OG says, predeterminism. This reduces their influence within the church because members keep questioning them and they don't have answers. When you remove the concept of hell, we can tell people, yes, you're predetermined to go to heaven. Imagine telling someone you're predetermined to go hell. They can't explain. Two, we also hope as a redemptive form of messaging rather than having to constantly bash them every day on Sunday. It's very hard for these people. Three, it provides justification for acts of God that they usually can't explain and reduce their influence in their congregation. How do you explain mentally ill people going to hell because they killed? How do you explain babies who die and where they go? This justification makes it easier for them to the extent that there is now a biblical precedent for this. It also helps them get better congregations and more buy-in for their churches within their communities because of the palatability of the message they have within their communities. And lastly, due to the Great Commission, it helps them be able to get more followers. Does it then help the church externally? And this is important. Externally here we mean within the members of the church, so people who are already Catholics. How do we make it easier for them? It gives for us better relationships with the church, God, and others. How does it make it better with their relationships with the church? How does it improve a Catholic's relationship with their church? One, they get better answers for the key questions that keep dwindling. Like bothering their mind every day. It also reduces the burden that they have every day, having to wake up, as I told you, am I a sinner, am I going to hell, all these things. It also removes the authority of the church over them, because the church right now has coercive incentives to almost in a sense mislead them, because it tells you what hell is. And considering I care about my afterlife, most of the time the church usually has very huge coercive powers over their members. It reduces that. And lastly, every Sunday is not a bashing. You get better engagement and you're not clouded by guilt every single day. Quickly. Anyway, let me continue. No.
Church, not imposing philosophical ideas.
Sorry, I can't hear you, Dalitso. Unfortunately, your network is breaking. I really can't hear you. You'll ask Desmond. How does this improve their relationship with other people? It helps them create better relationships with others, because currently they avoid non-Christians because they are seen as sinners, and that bad apple that will spoil them. Secondly, it reduces the amount of judgment they have to pass on to others, which harms their relationships to others. Because of the Great Commission, they're constantly telling people how they are going to hell, and this harms their relationships. And thirdly, it causes extreme pain to parents who see like their children in the LGBTQ community. The Bible says they are going to hell. That pain that they constantly have to live with, just knowing that their children are damned or doomed forever, this is something that reduces it. We think this is something that creates a better world for these people who are within the church. How does this ensure the continuity of the church? Because it ensures better relationships of the members and better relationships of those in power. Then this almost in a sense ensures that the church gets better outcomes compared to this. They can survive backlash. The church has the authority of interpretation. They have done this before. The Catholic Church is different. How does this then also lead to the interest of the Pope in getting people who are non-Christians? Desmond will expand on this, but more importantly, it gives them a different form of messaging. It isn't based on pain, but rather pleasure maximization. They're talking to people who don't believe in the church due to this messaging of heaven and hell, and they can be able to preach a message that is more unifying and brings more people to the church. Never been prouder to propose.
All right. Thank you very much, member of government, for that fine speech. We hereby welcome the member of opposition to proceed the debate for us. Here.
Sorry, am I completely clear?
Yes, you are.
All right. So, just a few minutes to organize my notes, and I'll be seconds. Wait, I say minutes. I'll be starting shortly.
Member of opposition, we are waiting for you, please.
Flip. I was speaking for a while, but apparently I was still muted. Flip. All right. In any case, starting in 3, 2, 1. Panel. We think that there are particular problems with the entirety of government bench here, but particularly the OG and CG. Why is this so? Because one, they misunderstand exactly how the institution of the Catholic Church is, and they misunderstand the very fact that this debate should be centered around whether or not the Pope should be having this kind of actions. Panel, we think that interesting arguments come from CG, particularly as regards how they say, we need to shift the message to more of a message of peace. We don't think that there is the necessity to abolish hell in order to do this, right? You can just preach the message of heaven. We don't see how editing scriptures or changing the interpretation of doctrines is something that necessarily is going to improve that, right? But apart from that, we think that this doctrine is central to the institution of religion, right? It basically goes through, the doctrine of hell is something that goes through the entirety of religious texts. What you then do is, apart from explaining why hell is non-existent and explaining why there are differences in the language in and of itself. You then have to explain its relation to a lot of other things. Apart from just the concept of heaven, you then have to re-explain the messages of how Jesus preached, or how the entirety of the balance in Christianity is. We think that this not only puts in an unnecessary strain, but it's an action that is entirely futile. We'll move on into our arguments, right? My whip is going to basically take out the case of OG, but let's go into CG. CG said that, oh, they want purgatory to exist, but they don't want hell to exist. And of course, OG mentions a bit of this. We think that essentially, right, people subscribe to religions because they believe in the practices of it. They believe in certain things that exist in it. At the point where we then say to these people within religions that we are going to start editing these practices and doctrines, we are going to start changing the content of it for some form of appeal or the other. We think that it essentially takes away from the actualization of these people, right? But it even affects their relationship because it creates that significant doubt in persons. Panel, the institution of Christianity is not one that is entirely based on logic. In fact, the majority of Christianity is based on faith, right? It's based on the absolute belief in the word of God and what has been given from there. It is also based on the idea that these things are largely unchanging. Panel, at this time where we then have a situation where Christianity is already under fire for a number of things and people are currently critical of a lot of its doctrines, what then is best for us to do? Do we then create a situation where we start to delete beliefs or abolish beliefs, or do we essentially just go ahead with what we are? We think that the alternative self of saying that hell is non-existent but purgatory exists, it's somewhat counterintuitive because we don't see one in our world. We can just say that hell exists, but hell exists as purgatory. We don't think that it's necessary to scrap the interpretation of hell from there, right? But what exactly do we give you from closing opposition? We think essentially, right, how this affects the nature of belief of persons. Panel, the belief of persons in religion is based on what exactly they have within those religions, right? It's based on certain fixed principles. At the point where we then start to edit this principle, what it does for these people, it creates significant doubt in the belief they've had. So before you even get to the point where you are going to be discussing with other people and apologetics, you are basically desensitizing people within the religion. Why is this so? At the point where we start making huge contradictions, we've already seen it when it happened with something that is even significantly more minor as the issue of the LGBTQI. However, the concept of hell is central to the message of Christianity. So it is heaven and hell. If Jesus came to die to save you from hell, at the point where you then misinterpret, when you then scrap hell from that conversation, Jesus came to die because he felt like. We feel like it significantly affects the belief of these Catholics themselves, because they find themselves in a position where ultimately what they then start to think is, okay, so how much of this is a lie? If the church is just now discovering that, oh, this is change, how much is going to change in this other time? It then means that people are more likely to leave Catholicism, right? But for the other people on the other side, panel, we think that essentially the reason why people are leaving Christianity is not necessarily because of the hardness, because religion does not always preach a message of hardness. People are leaving Christianity because of certain things, like, or the reason why people are outside Christianity now is because they prefer things like atheism, they prefer things like using logic, right? We didn't think at the point where you cannot even explain religion on the basis of logic, but you then start to shift to try and pander to those people. You create the narrative even to them that your own beliefs are not determined by what is contained in your scripture and are not determined by any objective form of truth which is descended from whatever God you are serving within Christianity. It is then determined by what the societal perception is. Why is this more problematic now than ever, right? We've already told you how Christianity is in a particular position that puts it in the spotlight, right, where people are already skeptical. It then significantly decreases the option or the idea of people without religion that are outside of it, because it basically gives them the idea that at any point the religions or the doctrines in religion will basically change, right? It tells them that, oh, we can just interpret some other text some other time and it will change. We think this doesn't even give buy-in to these people, because nobody will want to be within a practice that is not even straightforward, right, that doesn't have function in its belief. But apart from that, we think that ultimately it shifts away from the point of religion, which is basically improving the lives of persons and preparing them for heaven and to avoid hell and all of that, and the message of Jesus. But then it makes religion an argument, an academic argument, right? It then makes more about the concept of, oh, does hell exist, does hell not exist. We think that should not be the focus of the Pope at this time, but rather in the way that he is able to push forward the messages that are within religion, particularly the messages of peace. We think that at the point when you then shift the focus in religion from the central doctrine, from all these other things, to being basically, oh, hell exists, hell doesn't exist, we think that it significantly affects how religion exists, right? But apart from that, we think there's already certain level. One major reason why this is pointless, right, is because people already have their beliefs, independent mostly of whatever the Pope does. The vast majority of what the papacy is supposed to do and the Catholic Church is provide guidance to these people, right? So at the point when you then start to do this, we think that the vast majority of people who themselves are still within religion because they are conservative, because the vast majority of liberals themselves do not subscribe to religious identities because of the things within it, and at the point where you then say we have to overhaul the entirety of our belief in order to appeal to these people, we think that you already take away from the essence for them to be there, because you have turned Christianity from being Christianity to something else that is a construct, right? But we we tell you how ultimately it then creates division, because you are basically streamlining people into two lines. You are then saying, okay, so hell does not exist. This thing you have believed in so far is not good. Apart from invalidating the beliefs of people, which then means that they are less likely to stay in this kind of world, you create a situation where people then start to think of the Catholic Church that, okay, so why have you put us under these things so far? We think that it basically just takes away from the doctrine, but also we think that they have showed us, government bench just continue to show us why, oh, this is coercive, right? But they think that that's a bad thing. We do not see why it is any form of we don't see why it's a problem for this doctrine to be coercive, or why that is going to affect us. We think that religion primarily is a tool of control, and what is paramount for the Pope is how to keep people there. If then the message of hell and whatnot, and you have it, is something that has shown from time to time to keep people in this religion, we do not see why it is illegitimate to continue to push this message, right? We think that basically at the point where you then start to do that, you shift away from the religion. You mean that people are going to be living, or they will be living the power of the Pope and the papacy, and they will be living the Catholic Church. It then means that religion is seen as less and less of a tool of achieving social peace, but more as a political tool. But why is this particularly bad, right? It then means that at any time, apart from the fact that religion is now malleable and it can change, and the fact that people then lose incentive in their belief, it then means that ultimately at any time, the Pope is then seen as a figure which is unstable, right? You are presenting the idea that whatever you are going to continually do is not stable. But apart from that, we tell you how in our own world, right, we basically save ourselves a lot of these things. We continue to maintain our position, and then we are able to get people more. Why is this so? We think that ultimately this doctrine is one that sells. In fact, it's the vast majority for a lot of people being in religion. At the point where we then start to edit this doctrine, we not only invalidate the religious books, which then means that people outside then consider it as a political tool or a story that people are going to misinterpret, but ultimately we take away from the incentive to join the religion, stay in the religion. We are proud to oppose.
All right. Thank you very much, member of opposition, for that bulky, nice, and good speech. So we welcome the government whip to end the debate for the government bench. Here.
Hello. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'll be taking POIs in the chat space, probably two, from opening position and closing position for fair and on the diagonal and in the closing off. But give me a few seconds. It together. I consent to be recorded though. Is that so stands? Starting in 5, 3, 2, 1. Panel, realize the concept of religion doesn't always exist on a word punishment mechanism. In Christianity, CO comes to tell you that the whole exists on a word and punishment spectrum. Realize that people such as Jehovah's Witnesses do not believe in hell. Their population have not decreased, or their people left. Adventists do not believe in hell. Feel free to ask any of them, ask myself, Google this. The religion has not hell. This is not something that is so brand new, people have not heard before. Before continuing to dismantle the case and take seat on the debate, Macharia's second argument has lots of impact that I must make clear for CO to understand. First, understand that this is the reason why. It's the only major religion. This is why we get buy-in, right? It is the only major religion with that kind of meeting, which means like we are going to be the biggest people, to be the biggest actor for the barriers Macharia told you that people will not enter the religion. Secondly, this gets more Christians, people such as Protestants, can enter religion and feel free, because these are things that actually relate to them. People are spiritual but not Catholic can join because of the concept of they have an incentive to join. I'm spiritual, but I don't believe in religion because I don't buy the whole idea of heaven and hell. Person. Thirdly, it removes contradictory messaging such as God loves you, but will still kill you if you do not go according to God's will. It's like a chunk of the case you get from CEO to tell you that Jesus Christ came to die for you, and then Jesus Christ come to say Jesus Christ came. Actually, that is contradictory. Jesus Christ's death was to take a sin.
Hello,
sin does not exist. Okay. Hello.
Yeah.
Please pause my time.
Yeah, it's paused already. You seem to be breaking. I would appreciate you.
Okay. I think I'll remove this and use a mic.
All right, please do, and then we would appreciate if you can restart.
Yes, can you hear me better now?
Yes,
can you
we
hear me
can.
better? Can I restart, please?
Or should I?
Yes, it's better now.
Okay. Okay, let me restart so that everything is clear. Thank you. So restarting in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Realize the idea of religion does not strive on a punishment and reward mechanism. People such as SDA Advent do not believe this. The number of people there do not believe in this. These people do not die. Buddhists do not believe in this outside the Christian religion. They do not. That comes to tell you this is not something brand new that the like notes this. Things that Macharia tells you that we must understand in the debate when we do this. The Bible says the greatest thing for the church to do is the great go forth and make them disciples. When we do this message, why are people more likely to buy in? For some reasons. One, it's because it will be the only major religion or sect of Christianity with who would have much more when we advertise because we have the capacity. Two, this can get more Christians, especially Protestants. Why? Thirdly, because people are they do not such as them cannot go to hell. This is something people can relate with. It will not contradict such as you God created, you brought you on the earth, but you cannot enter. There are as 5-1 Macharia you.
Hello, can what is wrong? Sorry, you are still breaking. Do you still have your headset on?
No. Can you please pause? Oh God.
I think it's a network issue. It's not like the mic or anything.
But then everybody, wow.
Give me the light.
What did you say?
I'm coming. Let me go outside. Sorry.
All right, we are with.
Please, did you hear up to the point that I started breaking, or should I start over again? If you did not hear it, I'll be okay to start over.
You would have to start over, but please get a good place so we don't have to do this again.
Okay, please, can I read the motion?
Sure.
Okay. Okay. So the motion says, this house as the Pope would interpret the concept of hell as non-existent.
All right, that was clear.
Okay, thank you. I'm very sorry for that. It will not happen again. I'll restart now. Sorry, very, very sorry for that. Let me just enter the chat. Okay. Starting for the third time in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Panel, realize that so many people do not buy into this idea of heaven and hell. People such as religion, not all religions do this, and not even all Christian sects do this. As I told you, people such as Adventists and people such as Jehovah's Witnesses do not do this. There has not been any net decrease. This is not something brand new that will shake the world, that gets everybody talking. In status, or even Buddhists who are not Christians but a religious sect do not do this. 5 reasons why when we do this we get more buying, because the primary goal of any Christian religious body is go forth and make ye disciples for Christ. One, because we'll be the only major religion or major religious sects doing this. People such as Catholics, right, they have the capacity to do this on a very large level to take people. People such as Protestants, secondly, will join because this is a more consistent thing with something they buy. Thirdly, people who are not spiritual but religious would still want to do this because they do not believe in the whole concept of religion, heaven and hell, but they believe in the doctrines of religion. They will relate to this. Fourthly, it takes away the contradictory messages that God loves you but will be wrathful. These things such as, that is why even the whole chunk of CO's case false. They'll be like them, the death of Christ is useless. No, in their world, that is why it is much more worse. Because if truly Jesus came to die for your sins and sins are no longer even in existence, then hell must not exist. This is even the most logical thing compared to Jesus came to die for you, but if you cannot, Jesus came to wipe your sins away, but there are still sins and you have to do them, and if you do not do them, you go to hell. These are things that do not do. This helps the church grows on 3 reasons. 1, the Great Commission responsibility. 2, because the church full, because it's greater following, we can take more activities. Internal church unity is grown, external church unity is grown. These are just the process of access. Because see, realize, panel, we've done so many things where we have reinterpreted religious scripts. Things such as sexism, where people believed that in the Bible patriarchy was normal, people could marry more than 50 women. We have reinterpreted these religious bodies allow people to marry and to not marry more than 1 people.
Two, issues on issues on like slavery and racism. Gone are the days when Bible was interpreted with slavery epithets. Thou shalt be a servant to their master. The religious bodies have come to prove that this is not true. This is something that is not that we have not done before. We have done this before. Homosexuality was something that was shunned and banned. Today, the religious body, the Pope, came out to say homosexuals are accepted. If you can change, you can still be here. Which means this is something that is not new. Going to CG and deleting CEO out of the debate. What do they bring to us? CEO comes to tell us that CG comes, okay, from OG first. OG comes to tell us that if heaven does not exist, if hell does not exist, heaven does not exist. This is principally untrue. This is a logical leap. Why is it a logical leap? There is nothing to prove that hell holds heaven together. There's nothing to prove that when you buy into one ideology, you cannot buy into the other. I use this rebuttal to enter the finals. I'll use it again. Partial nature of things. You can believe heaven exists and believe hell does not exist. You can believe hell exists and believe heaven does not exist. In any realm, you can do this. There is no way to prove that if hell is not there, heaven is not there. This is something that can be unproven. On the balancing systems that heaven might exist for hell to exist, it is factually flawed. Why is this true? Macharia gave the POI that OG stole to use for their case. They came to tell you, we told you about the purgatory. Purgatory means that even if you die, you go to a middle place where you can actually work to go to heaven. Which means even in the worst case, that balancing system they argue does not exist if they buy into this already existing mechanism. Thirdly, that ideologically will be inconsistent. Four things. One, the world has become more progressive. As I already proved to you, 5 things have been changed majorly. Nobody has backlash or gone away. By the end of the day, religion is something that beats you and kill you to accept. If people do not want to be there, if conservatives still want to believe in racism, the church cannot brainwash them. If people do not want to believe that hell still exists, they can do this in their own micro spaces. Going to CG and why they are not in debate. One, CG comes to tell you that one, Christ died for sin, as I've already analyzed and taken out of the debate. That they longer say that there has to be an objective form of truth. What is an objective form of truth? Believe that over the years, plenty things have changed. They have given you so much examples. Things that relate to people, that people have to exist on, are things that we might give. That means that whenever something can bring us close to God, does not destroy heaven, does not impede on the Great Commission, we can still do this. That is why we can do two things. One, we can still exist in a world where people believe hell does not exist, but heaven does. Thirdly, what do we come to prove to you? They tell us that that people who doubt and they believe that they have. We have seen scriptures before. We do not see how people doubt. We have done things before. We do not see how people change. We have seen things to be morally right. We do not see how people throw away the Bible. People curse religions because homosexuality was something that was shunned before, but now the Catholic Church accepts this to be true. We do not believe this as true. But things that they do not respond to, panel, realize there are barriers to get to heaven in their way. Macharia told you, be like Jesus, be deontological. Even if there's a necessary evil, realize that people have inherent needs. People have to still to survive. We have to understand that these are things that governments do not take care of. To be basically alive, they do not care that they'll go to hell. They must exist. True, that people must even in all businesses tell the truth. Which means if telling a lie, if not giving the location of my brother's place will save my brother, I should not tell a lie. I should tell the truth for people to go and kill him. These are things human beings cannot do. Macharia told you how, even if that is what you're going to do, most of us cannot exist today. Thirdly, understand that the commandment exists. You flout one, you flout all. And there are even 10 ones that scripted. Things like do not wear matching clothes or fair things are things that people believe are in the Bible. If you flout these things, you flout do not kill, you will go to hell. Thirdly, what does all this mean? This means that at the end of the day, people due to these barriers will not go. But if we understand that heaven exists, we understand that you don't have to be compelled by your for your fear of hell to go and do this. People will actually be there. Why is it true that religion is like Christianity is losing a harm? Something that must be done. Something that Macharia tells you that clashes with the argument from OG that this is not necessary. Things like the Enlightenment, things like French Revolution, where they actually killed the people that were appointed by God. People went over and destroyed the presidents of God, appointing someone. Since French Revolution, people have seen that even if you go against the will of these gods, nothing will happen to you. Fourthly, numbness to pain. Understand, you cannot keep people boxed in forever. For us to achieve the Great Commission, you cannot keep telling them you will go to hell, you will go to hell, you will go to hell. That is why people will tell you, after all, hell exists. Tell them that the love of God is something that will take you to heaven. If you still continue doing this by the principle of numbness of pain, you go high, you get what you want. At the end of the day, people are tired. These barriers they cannot run away from actually happen. Discourses are being had about how religion uses people's bodily mechanisms to fight against them. I do not know what will happen if I die. There's a cognitive dissonance. What happens is that I do not know if I'll go to heaven or hell. I cannot objectively tell what is true or what is a lie. That is why I would not know, and I can opt out. All these things exist, they must engage. Deleted OCG, OCO, and I've deleted OG from the debate. Why do we place over O in this debate? We show you the interest in keeping people in. We tell you the barriers that exist. We tell you how this is not something you practice already. We tell you that this is something that will get more value and will achieve the Great Commission. Thank you. I wish my brother happy birthday for all the debates and things I've been today. This winning this will be something that. Thank you.
All right. We thank the whip of government for that fine speech and welcomes the whip of opposition to close the debate for us. Here.
Am I audible now?
Yes. You are audible, but not.
I'm sorry. I need to do a lot of things this night, and I'm sorry for the whole noise, everything. Just a situation of things. So I hope I'm audible now, and the noise.
Yes. You are.
I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. At the end of the day, 3 questions, CG and 1. Does religion exist on the perspective of few individuals within society? Or does religion exist on the perspective of how individuals interact with the spirituality of who they are, what they believe in, and what they stand to gain within these religious organizations and religious institutions? That question primarily tells you that all of the arguments we got from Macharia, how the church preaches about people are going to die, people that are carrying these actions, that have these actions, are still going to die. The same church still preaches that people who have perpetrated these actions and have asked for forgiveness are going to go to heaven. What it tells is that the message of hell do not exist only on its own. There are sentiments that you must do, but you know to go to hell. It doesn't mean that whatever thing you do, that your internal damnation is hell, just like OG. No, but it gives you there is also an escape mechanism that is going to prevent you going to hell. At the end of the day, this thing tells you that individuals have been able to live, accept this thing, as opposed to what the church just teaches, what they accept primarily as what is important to them and as what they stand to gain within this religion. That was go the hardest side of this debate. At a particular point, you decide to change, or the Pope decides to do this, to interpret this thing, for some individuals they feel they are going to get a lot of buy-ins and support to them. What happens to other individuals that have been okay, support this motion, and has lived with them, and has done everything to practically show why they support this and why it is their personal belief and their personal assumption? The reason why this is very important is that, one, we are in a world where majority of the Christians, just like the member of government which said, do not give a fuck about hell, and they don't give a fuck about heaven. That's primarily to tell you that at a particular point, individuals who are within the Catholic doctrines that were not coerced or forced into these things, that cannot view or accept this particular narrative or particular teachings on what the church tells you. The church tells you that you have the opportunity for you to either opt out of these things or for you to find a mechanism of how to mitigate between the two. The church does not inherently pronounce you to be defamed, or do not inherently pronounce you that you are going to go to hell. But there are certain conditions the source still shows that you can actually deal with this, and at the end of the day, you can either come out of it or you can actually exit in it. Secondly, panel, the church does not change interpretation just the way Macharia argues, because one, there is what we call the conclave of cardinals, and this takes a very long process. That is why before the Catholic Church decides to take a move, there are stages that have to be go. This does not just have to do with the Pope trying to give you philosophical or logical interpretation, but it has to go with one, what the believers of the church stand to gain. Secondly, the entire nuance of what the entire people within this particular religion stand to actually give to you. You do not just wake up to interpret the church because you feel a certain individuals are not benefiting from it. What is people that have lived within this thing and have sacrificed and paid the ultimate sacrifice. What you do is that you reduce their sacrifice and their belief to something of jeopardy. You probably say that God doesn't exist and all of their actions are very stupid and very flawed. We should notice that this is a religious issue. It does not have to do with how we treat social issues, because at the end of the day, individuals are not coerced, individuals are not forced, and individuals are not actually mandated to remain in this religion. At the particular point, you feel that you are no longer self-actualizing to the test for the spiritual being. How hard or how you cannot deal with the problem that exists within this religion. It is your human right, that self-actualization that Oji talks about, that you can actually out of these things and support any religion you feel that gives you that kind of support, that kind of ideology that you want. Did the church try to make changes that try to carry on with everybody? But at a particular point, a particular change is going to destroy the major bedrock on which the church stands for. Let me tell you clearly that the church has existed on a lot of things. This did not actually happen today. And for the particular point that the Pope is going to interpret this, use the very structure to which the church stands on. Everything about backlash doesn't even exist, because at the end of the day, you put the church in such a way that the church can be seen as a political party that does not have any divinity or any structure to what it does. We should notice that one, church exists not just primarily to deal with individuals. Secondly, it exists to connect people to the spiritual being. Thirdly, to integrate what you believe, your faith, and the strong will of what you stand. And it is not what the Pope interprets that determines what your afterlife is going to be, but it is what these individuals have actually accepted to be the core value of their faith, and they believe and stand in it. We have no right to change them or determine or tell what we should actually do in this part of in this instance. Secondly, we do not feel that we have the right to interpret individuals' choices of what they have actually been and what they have accepted. The reason why this is very important, at a particular point where individuals within this Catholic Church have lived by this for centuries, people have died and people are still growing and all of those things. What you do is that you backlash on the people and tell them you don't have a say. Therefore, because of few individuals that want to benefit within this thing, you can actually interpret this. What you do is that you legitimately disenfranchise and disenfranchise people that have actually sacrificed a lot of things to all of these things they want to ask you, because you have to consider one, there are people that have lived by this. Secondly, you don't actually call them fools, because any actions you take are actually going to touch on these people that have lived with this thing. You know, what case scenario that opening government can actually add your city is to tell us how the church is going to show that at the end of the day, the message they preach will not inherently mean another thing at the end of the day. But the fact that one, whether you believe in the church doctrine or whether you believe in the church teaching, the fact is that individuals personal belief on their faith and what they stand and the efforts they make are what that is going to be promoted at the end of the day. Panel, we notice three things. One, people have choices, people make sacrifices, people accept a certain methodology. It is in a world where people have always lived with this thing and it has always been okay with them. The problem then becomes, how will the church deal with a lot of people that has actually either suffered or do not self-actualize or have to bear a lot of burden in the past because the church supported this? The church cannot come out, change the very structure to which they exist. This is because the church has already started and they have existed beyond centuries. You don't just wake up and feel that a particular interpretation is going to give you the kind of intellectualization or the kind of acceptance you need. For how long does the church have to do this thing? There are certain marginals we need to understand. Within the same Catholic Church panel, there are still individuals, if the Bible condemns, etc., but you still see them engaging in this act. The church has actually taken a diplomatic stand. That is to tell you, at that particular point, the question of faith lies on individuals, no longer on the church. The church has done their part. The question then becomes individuals' acceptance of what they want, what they need, becomes the focus on how religion is built. And that is why at the end of the day, it is this individual faith that determines where they end up with, not exactly on what the churches preaches and all of those things. Those things are frameworks to how the church stands. But then it is the faith and the core belief of these individuals that makes it very, very important and manifest any part of thing we want to get at the end of the day. From opening of government, the argument of people do not have the choice to self-actualize. People are going to people are going to go to internal termination, and why it is very bad. Tell them secondly, if people have actually sacrificed this thing for centuries and beyond, and the church has existed, why do you feel we should change it? Because of few individuals that you want them to self-actualize. Because you inherently disenfranchise these individuals that have paid that ultimate sacrifice, and you make their faith to stand questionable. You ridicule the stand on which the church stands for, which is for spirituality and connectivity. Allow people to live within what the church teaches, as it accounts their faith, their belief. If they die and there is no afterlife, let them be the one to suffer it. The church has already done the primary aspect of what it stands for. They coming with their all argument to paint the church as though they preach a message of hell and therefore they have no other incentive. We still tell them one, the same church preaches a message of forgiveness and still shows you the rules and regulations and those you need to do. At the end of the day, you don't ultimately go to hell. And secondly, they show you at the end of the day that there are still choices. Religious choice still belief. Individual has the option to beg opt out, and then you don't conscribe or force the church to pass to your own perception because you feel you want to self-actualize, winning from closing opposition.
Awesome, awesome. Thanks so much, Opposition Whip, for closing the debate for us. Once again, thank you everybody for your availability, commitment, and doggedness. Yeah, it was a very beautiful round. Adjudicators, please let's meet at the briefing room. And see you all at the auditorium where we declare the winners. Thank you.